Today wasn't our best showing, but, Grant made a great point to the quarterbacks after practice. At the end of the day, we're not going to be judged on how today went. That this is just today, and you put it in a box, you learn from it, you move on. That doesn't determine what we do in week 1 versus Carolina, just like tomorrow won't determine necessarily what we do in Carolina. It's just an accumulation of all the days and taking all the information in.
Let's start off the show by reading between the lines a little bit. The Jaguars did not have the best practice down here in Miami with the Miami Dolphins. Welcome here into Teal the Show. Took the show on the road a little bit. The Jaguars wrapping up preseason practice with 1 day of joint practice work with the Miami Dolphins, and it was definitely an up and down kind of day. We'll try and put a bow on it and get you ready with everything you need to know before the Jaguars get ready for that final preseason game of the year over the next 15 to 20 minutes here, and we'll even take some mailbag questions. But let's start things off with first things first, right? The joint practices. We're here in Miami for a reason, and the Jaguars have wrapped things up. 1 day of work for them. The Miami Dolphins did 3 joint practices over the course of the preseason. Jaguars have just 1 day down here with Miami, and it was definitely a little bit of a rougher day. The defense kind of found their footing eventually, started a little slow, and then they got rolling. But for the offense, it was definitely a rough day. Trevor Lawrence described it as sloppy. But one way or another, Jarrian Jones and Trevor Lawrence both feel like the work that happened out here on the practice field in Miami was definitely valuable for helping to get them ready for week 1.
And it's good to go against a different defense. We've been going against our defense all camp. So just to see different looks, different disguises, to have to really play each play as its own and go back to some of our base rules is good for us as an offense, and kind of just measuring stick, like, hey, this is where we're at. This is kind of what we showed today. Let's learn from it and get better. So I think that's just an honest assessment of today. There's some stuff to clean up, but I thought guys competed hard, flew around. Just got to clean up some of the details.
You don't really game plan for these things. You know what I'm saying? So everything you're seeing is kind of new. You've never seen it, so you kind of going out there and just kind of working your technique, trying to work on your coverage calls. You know what I'm saying? But when you go against in training camp, you're seeing, obviously they install something new every day, but I see this receiver every day. Yeah. I see this receiver every day. I see this running back every day. I see this quarterback O-line. So you kind of, you know what I'm saying, pick up on certain stuff. And when you do joint practice, I think the biggest difference is you just going against somebody else. Not so much of scheme or anything, but you get a little more when you're going against somebody else.
Like I said, ups and downs. Look, this was definitely not the cleanest practice of the world for the Jaguars offense. Sloppy is a good word. The Jaguars defense, a little slow out of the gates, but they made their presence felt down the stretch, which is what you want. You want them to find their footing. And just like we heard from Trevor Lawrence at the beginning, overall, this team won't be judged by what happened out here on the practice field in Miami. It's about what they do come week 1 and the weeks after that. You got to start building on top of it. But one way or another, there were definitely some guys that stepped up to the challenge when it's time to compete. On the defensive side of the football, I'd say Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker both stepped up to the challenge out on the practice field. Both of them were tough to deal with for that Miami Dolphins offensive line. And that's honestly what you want. They are the star players. They're the impact guys on that defense. And when it's time to compete, you want them to step up and compete. On the offense, same exact story. It was Brian Thomas Jr. BT had some absolutely jaw-dropping plays. Including one where he caught a pass and outran the entire Dolphins defense up the sideline to get into the end zone. Liam Cohen says he was impressed with the way BT can turn it on when it's time to compete.
A little bit. Yeah, you see 7 a little bit differently in ways, right? Which is something we've obviously been told and have seen as well in different points during camp. But you can definitely see his uptick change a bit, which was nice to see. But it was good. It was good quality work. I was pleased with the effort in the way that they went about it. They took this thing seriously and tried to have a lot of pride in what they did.
Honestly, that's what you love about BT. I know some people have been concerned about his journey through training camp, but there's nothing to worry about when it comes to Brian Thomas Jr. This guy's good, and when it comes time to compete, he's going to crank it up a notch, and I am not worried about him being ready to go in week 1. We talked about maybe the star players that shine down here in Miami, but there's always an maybe under-the-radar guy, a quiet guy that steps up. For me, I thought Parker Washington quietly had a very good day. During one-on-ones, he created a ton of space. During the team drills, he caught a couple of passes, and including one that he was wide open on that, honestly, Trevor just missed him. But Parker had done his part, was wide open down the field. Parker Washington is a guy that has stacked some really good days throughout training camp, continues to shine, and showed up down here in Miami. Now, the next step for the Jaguars is, of course, this final preseason game, and then we got to start talking about cuts. They got about 90 guys on this roster right now, and they got to trim it down to 53. So with no starters playing on Saturday, Liam Cohen has announced that the starters will not play on Saturday. There are going to be some tough decisions, but this is going to be plenty of time for these guys that are competing for jobs to shine on Saturday and try and step up and see if they can make one last pitch to the Jaguars or some team around the NFL that they deserve to be on a roster. We'll talk about some of those bubble guys. We'll hear from a Duval dial-up and take some of your other mailbag questions right after this quick break when Teal the Show returns.
Yeah, when they had a short man with a long foot, like 7 yards, they should have used him and won the game, and it would have been over. It's not rocket science. When you can win, win. Have a nice day. God bless. My name is Jerry Day. Talk to me. I'm ready to talk. Want the Jaguars to be winners. Duval.
Look, I absolutely love these Duval dial-ups. Short guy with a long foot, let him kick the field goal. He's right. You got to try and win the game. We want to know what you think, how you're feeling about your team. The Jaguars play their final preseason game of the year on Saturday. Feel free to dial it up. The phone line is on your screen right now. Give us a call. Let us know what you're thinking, how you're feeling about the team, and you might, just might, hear yourself right here on Channel 4 or hear yourself over on the Sports for Jax Instagram. All right, I promised some mailbag questions. Let's get to them as we kind of wrap things up here on Teal the Show. We want to know what you got to ask or what you want to know as we kind of wrap things up for the preseason. We're at that point in the process. So let's start off with one from Spider_Jag. He wanted to know who was the first team O-line in practice. And this is the first team offensive line that we've seen a lot. Walker Little at left tackle, Ezra Cleveland at left guard, Ryan Hainsey at center, Patrick McCarry at right guard, and then Anton Harrison at right tackle. I don't think there's a whole lot of competition. If there's one spot that's in flux, it's that right guard spot between McCarry and Chuma Edoga. Edoga's dealing with a little bit of a knee situation and sideline, so we'll see just how long he's sidelined. I think if it was a game, Chuma would probably be able to play. I think they're being very conservative and precautionary. Wyatt Milam was pushing to try and get in the conversation for one of those jobs, but the rookie banged up and going to be sidelined for at least a little while. Let's go to another question. This one's from D. Runnels 51. He asked, is our tight end depth as bad as I think it is? I know Strange is a monster, but after him, who? And honestly, this was a spot that I was concerned about. After Brenton Strange, what do you have going into training camp? But honestly, I was pleasantly surprised by Hunter Long. Hunter Long has made big catches day after day out on the practice field, made some big catches out in the preseason, and I think he's a guy who could step up if needed to step up, at least in some capacity. As far as Johnny Munt, I think Johnny Munt is a load to deal with in the run game and gives you a strong run blocker. So I think they're okay behind Brenton Strange. Are either one of those guys going to step up and be the guy that Brenton Strange is? No, but I don't think if there was an injury to Brenton, they'd expect either one of them to be Brenton Strange, right? You expect Hunter Long to be Hunter Long in that situation. Let's go to another one. This one's from C_CLEEE. How are our DBs doing against Waddle and Hill? That's all they want to know. So, look, honestly, we know Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are two of the better wide receivers, fast guys. And the Jaguars DBs, they held their own. They struggled early in practice a little bit. Jarian Jones told you that in the first half of the show, but they found their footing, and they were having some battles out there, right? Look, Jarian Jones was tried a handful of times over the course of practice, but he didn't get beat. He forced a handful of incompletions and did his job, and that's all you can ask for from the DBs. It also helps when your pass rush guys are getting home, and that's why Josh and Trayvon are so important to this defense. Let's do one last question, and this one's from Glaze BTJ. Wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, and just a question mark after it. Wide receiver 5, I think that one's Trenton Irwin. He joined the team a little bit late. I think he's come on over the course of training camp. I think he gives them a little bit of special teams value as a possible returner, and I think he's the guy that's going to lock up that wide receiver 5 job. Wide receiver 6, I think they're making calls, man. Sean Payton referenced in a Broncos press conference that the Jaguars had called about a receiver that they recently traded to the New Orleans Saints. I don't think wide receiver 6 is on the Jaguars roster right now. We'll see how it all shakes out and if it ultimately is maybe one of these guys that's here. But I think ultimately wide receiver 6 might be a guy they sign off the street or after the cuts happen next week. We'll see what happens. Look, one last preseason game before we wrap this whole thing up for the preseason, and then we start counting down the days until week 1 against the Carolina Panthers. Yeah, this is when the fun really starts. So we'll wrap up that preseason game. On Monday night, we're going to be talking about the roster and who we think is on the bubble and should be on that 53 when all is said and done. If you've been hanging out with us the entire way through training camp, I appreciate you. And hopefully you'll decide to continue to hang out with us over the course of the entire regular season. Every Monday and Friday night, we'll be right here on Channel 4 at 11:20 with everything you want to know about your favorite team. Good night, everybody, and go Jags.